Nailed It is Netflix's outrageous reality bake-off competition series in which three amateur bakers with questionable talents compete to replicate complicated cakes. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby. I'm here with comedian, actor, writer, and host Nicole Byer. Nicole, the show was inspired by the internet sensation of people trying and failing to make these elaborate cakes, which I remember watching on the internet all the time and just laughing my head off. Before you signed up, were you aware of this craze that people were getting involved in?
I didn't know it was like as big as it was, but like sometimes you'd be online and you'd see like, this is what I tried to make, and this is what it actually looks like. This is what it's supposed to look like. And I've seen them, laughed at them. I just didn't realize that it would like resonate with people so much to watch like an episode of television about that.
Yeah. Let's talk about why it resonates, because what do you say is the point of the show? Because it appears to celebrate mediocrity or failure, but that's not the case. That's not really what we're doing here. It's about, you tell us, what do you think it is?
I mean, I don't think it celebrates mediocrity. I think it's more like celebrating that you have to try. Like if you don't try something, how will you ever know if you're good at it? Also, you're not going to be good at something the very first time you do it. I think it truly just celebrates people trying their best. And that's okay. It's okay to not be the best at something.
Yeah, like that's actually quite refreshing. Like to date, you are most known as for your work as a comedian, and your comedy is really edgy and very very funny and kind of rude, which is what I love most about it. Why did you decide to take on a gig as a host of an off-the-wall bake-off show? It just doesn't seem like the thing that you would have I would have thought that's a Nicole Byer type project.
No, I never thought I'd host a baking competition show either, but they like came to me with it was just like a pitch deck of like what they were trying to have the show be. And they were like, we do want it to be funny, which is why we came to a comedian to ask you to do it. But also we don't want a mean comic, but we want someone to like point out that some of this stuff looks wild. And I was like, I think I could toe the line between like calling things out and being not harsh, but like being like, this does look insane. You have to admit that. And then like bringing comedy into it. And I was like, I think that might be fun. Also, I didn't know what the show was. Nobody really knew what the show was until, the final edits came in and you're like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, and it's actually started to really take off for the last few years. People absolutely adore this show. My theory is that it's about positivity, having fun, not taking yourself too seriously, and about lightening up. And every time I watch it, it puts me in a really good mood. And I just have a good chuckle at the ridiculous cake that these people have made and failed at. And then I see, okay, job well done. You did it. It worked. I actually have lightened up now. Like that's got to be satisfying for someone who's primarily a comedian. But now that you're working on the show, is that a good thing?
That you've like lightened up about shit? Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, like why take everything so seriously? Like life is silly and it's filled with mistakes and you can't be perfect all the time. That's not realistic.
Yeah, your hosting emphasizes that because you're obviously having a really good time and you've got these endearing one-liners, and then you make these really funny faces and you tell these jokes about the travesties that the bakers have created. You're right. If it was a different kind of comedian, it would come across like you were trying to humiliate them or make them the butt of the joke, whereas you're not doing that at all. What is it about your way in which you interact with contestants and your version of comedy that makes it feel like you're kind of in the joke with them?
I think it's like my disposition. I think I'm a happy person and I like look people in the eyes when I'm critiquing them because they're a person who made something.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always make the edit when I'm like, you made this and like that, you should be proud of that because you came from wherever you came from. You got on a plane, you stayed in a hotel. We put 8 cameras on you and told you you had an hour to make something beautiful and you tried. And then also the wilder cakes look, the happier I am. I love when they look insane. And like in between judging, sometimes I'm like, just so you know, this is one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Like I like weird stuff, and the people make the weirdest stuff, and they're all really kind. Like we haven't had any like awful contestants, except for that man who licked a piece of something to put on his cake. That man is not my friend. I was so upset.
Oh my God, I know. Like for any germaphobe like myself and probably you, that was horrifying. That was like a horror movie.
Yes.
You know, it's a very fine line not to make fun of these people and make them the butt of the joke. And I think that's really, really important, because I'm always expecting them to be humiliated, and they're not. They're just having a really good time, because some of those cakes are just ugly, man. They're really ugly. I love it how that happens. And like we talked a little bit about this offline, and we don't have to go into too much detail. It's completely up to you. But there's so much sadness and anger going on right now in the world, all over the world for various reasons. But right now it's because of the upheaval and the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. It's concerning, and it also puts us in a position where we're hoping that things might change. And then we talk about frivolity, like Nailed It. How do you balance those two parts of the world in your head about how important things are, and how yet we can talk about silly things like this?
I guess it's just I don't have a choice. No Black person has a choice. We deal with the reality of our lives and discrimination and implicit bias and the inherently systemic racist society that truly exists all over the world. We deal with that literally every single day. So if I didn't find levity in order to host the show, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Black people live in a duality where we are oppressed, depressed, sad about what's going on, but then you package that all away and you go to work, you know? Like when stuff happens at work where someone says something racist, maybe you call them out, or maybe you're like, I'm tired. I'm tired. It shouldn't be all of our responsibility, but a lot of times it does land on Black people to deal with that. But yeah, that's just how you have to.
It's a really interesting perspective, because obviously you're coming from a completely different lens to me and many others. And maybe the point of this movement is for various reasons, but one of them will be a bit of awareness and maybe some like empathy and some change in the way we all perceive things. And so that brings me back to superficially Nailed It, because that I realized when I was watching it that allowed me to empathize with these weirdo people who just, or they're lovely actually, who don't even really know how to bake, and yet here they are doing it. Where does the producers find these people?
Oh, I have no idea. I have nothing to do with casting. It's a competition show, so like I'm not allowed to know contestants or really like interact with the contestants. Yeah, because there's like money on the line, and there's a thing where it's like I might like give them a secret to help them win. I don't know how to bake, so like honestly, they're not in danger of that. But yeah, I don't know where the contestants. I don't know how they find them.
Do you have a ultimate highlight from the show so far in terms of just an absolute hot mess of a failure?
This man had put salt in his cupcake instead of sugar, and that was truly very awful. It was just so weird to like have it in my mouth and be like, I think this is the worst food item I've ever eaten. And I like couldn't, I was like, what is it? And then Jacques was like, it is a salt. And I was like, oh my God, how awful. But you know, people make mistakes, and it was a very funny mistake.
Yeah, that I remember that. I think you could never forget that, because it's such a tactile situation when you're eating salty cake. It's horrifying. Last year, Nailed It was nominated in the extremely competitive reality competition program category at the Emmys. It was a bit of a surprise. What do you remember the morning of the announcement when you found out that the show was nominated? What were your thoughts on that day?
It was funny because my friend Darcy Carden, who's on The Good Place, we've improvised together for like years, and she was announcing it with, I think, Ken John. And my roommate was watching it, my roommate John Milheiser, and he was in his room watching it on TV, and he was like, "Oh, Nicole." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "You just got nominated for an Emmy." And I was like, "Who did?" He was like, "Nailed It did." And I was like, "No, it didn't. He was like, no, Darcy just said it. And she sounded surprised too. And that made me laugh. And then I got like a phone call where they're like, we were nominated for an Emmy. Nobody seemed like, wow, slam dunk. This is what we were going for. We were expecting it. Like, we truly didn't expect it. And then going to the Emmys was also very weird.
Yeah. What was that day like? Oh, that was the purple carpet year, so that was last year. Was that? Oh,
Yeah.
you probably, yeah. Was it a fun night? It's a very surreal experience.
Yeah, it's very strange to be like, oh, there's Viola Davis. She's like right in front of me, or like Catherine O'Hara. Like, it's just like so wild. And it's one of those things where you're like, I shouldn't be here. I feel like I broke into the Emmys. But yeah, it was a really fun night. We didn't win. We didn't think, I knew we were not going to win. And of course, RuPaul's Drag Race won, which is one of my favorite shows. But I got to wear like a Christian Siriano gown. It was just very, very insane. It was all so insane.
And you know what? Even more importantly, did you know that you were nominated last year at the Gold Derby Awards? Not only for competition, but Nicole as host, and you were nominated as Reality Host of the Decade.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm just saying, you're very popular at Gold Derby. You have 3 nominations already in your career to date. Congratulations.
I love it. Thank you.
Unfortunately, you lost all 3 to RuPaul, but that's a whole other thing.
I mean, sure, I fully expect that.
Yeah, for whenever you're nominated from now on, I'm probably thinking you're going to have to take out RuPaul if possible. Like, figure that out.
Yeah, I'll win an Emmy when RuPaul misses a season of Drag Race and it doesn't air to be nominated.
Yeah, then you're in. Then you've got, it's you. It's all about you. I want to also just talk about, you do quite a bit of podcast work, actually, and that's where I was first familiar with you, to be honest. Your series, Why Won't You Date Me, is so funny. It's so rude and raunchy, which is like, that's my wheelhouse. Love it.
Thank you.
How much do you enjoy that being so unfiltered and no holds barred?
I love it because it's a platform that I created for myself, so I can say what I want, interview who I want, and when people comment, I take that into consideration. I'm like, oh, okay, you don't like this, I can figure out something else. Like, I used to have everyone read through my Tinder profile, but then like I wasn't changing it, so it was like, oh, this is redundant. Someone commented that, and I was like, then we'll get rid of that little segment. But now it's like truly evolved into something more than just a dating podcast, which I really, really love. And I get to talk to people from like all walks of life. It's really fun. I love it.
Yeah. And the same would go for, if anyone checks out your Twitter feed, you don't really ever hold back. You say what you want to say. And for example, like when you speak to a comedian, for example, like Ricky Gervais, he always says, there's really no limit to comedy. You should be able to joke about anything. And if you don't like it, then that's on you. Do you feel the same way?
This is a hard question. I do think you can joke about anything as long as it's funny.
Yeah.
And if you are going to talk about something that is a hot button issue or something that could offend somebody, you also have to realize you could offend somebody and somebody may tell you why. And there is a very fine line between like, this is like edgy comedy or like, this is hurtful and mean. And why are you joking about this? What is the point you're trying to say by joking about, Ricky Gervais has trans jokes. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you feel the need to talk about them? What is the point? What is the funny and what is the point? I think that's a question that comics don't necessarily often ask when they're, being like, free speech, you can joke about anything as long as, but like, I agree. I just think it has to be undeniably funny. And if you have to explain why it's funny, it might not be funny. And it's okay to go, I thought this was funny like last year. This year, I don't think it's funny. And I do apologize that I offended people, but at the time I thought it was funny. I'll never apologize for a joke because I said it because I thought it was funny, but I'll stop telling it, like I'll stop telling it and I'll acknowledge that I offended people. But it's an interesting thing to think about.
It's so interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned that particular aspect, because things that are funny now may not necessarily be funny in 5 years' time when society might have moved on. We used to make trans jokes 20 years ago, and no one thought anything of it because it wasn't, people weren't aware. These days, we wouldn't do it. So you also might find that. Are you aware of this? That things that you used to joke about are not necessarily going to be funny tomorrow.
Yes, I have recorded almost every set that I've ever done because for me, listening to things and timing is really helpful. So like I've listened to sets that I've done like 5, 6 years ago, and there's some jokes in it that I'm like, oh, I would never do this now. I understand why I thought it was funny at the time, but like, no, thank you.
Yeah, exactly right. I adore anyone that can champion self-esteem and body positivity and authenticity. I think I just wish we had more of that in our culture. You've got a book coming out called #VeryFat, #VeryBrave.
Yes.
Yeah, that does just that. Now, I don't think it's out quite yet, but it's coming out
It
next month,
is.
right? It is. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it came out June 2nd.
That's
So
right. Okay. So it's very new, but amongst the many hilarious life lessons it imparts, can you give us a sneak peek without too many spoilers so people will actually read it on how to handle haters? It's very important.
Actually, I could just read it from the book.
Good.
Okay, let's see, dealing with insults. So the insult is, look at that fat ass. And the responses that I said that you can say are, yes, bitch, look at this fat ass, then twerk. And then another response, you can go, where's the ass and how fat is it? And then you start to twerk. And then if someone's like, look at that fat ass, you can go, do I have to pull over? And then you sing Trina's Pull Over That Ass Too Fat. It's just a lot of
that's brilliant.
Really dumb things. But all the responses are dumb and funny because somebody commenting on what you look like is inherently dumb. Like, why you see something you don't like, a really cool thing you can do is turn around. You don't have to look at anything you don't like.
Turn off the TV. Yes. Scroll on your social media.
Flip the page. You don't have to comment on anybody's body to their face. You don't have to do it on the internet where you have anonymity and you feel better about it. You don't have to do any of that stuff. That's it. Just
shut the fuck up and get on with your life, basically.
Yeah.
Nicole, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Good luck for the rest of the year. I know you've got some shows coming up at the end of the year, and thank you for your
I don't know if they're gonna happen.
Everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe. We've got plenty of contender chats just like this one with Nicole.